John, there is at least one person on this show that has been suspended. And I don't really want to go into depths of that, but I didn't do anything wrong and got Employee of the Month at the Knoxville News Sentinel. I'll leave it with that. Deion Sanders has decided to suspend a reporter. And I know this was not on our docket to talk about, but I specifically, given your history in the newspaper industry and the media industry, sorry to pivot on you, but I wanted to get your take. What does this say about Deion Sanders and the Colorado football program?
Well, it's a clown show, and it has been one for quite a while. Colorado thought, when it hired Deion, Colorado had no presence as a football program. I don't think it had any more presence than Colorado State. It was just kind of out there. Nobody thought about Colorado football. It hires Deion, and all of a sudden, everybody's talking about it. The networks went crazy. ESPN went crazy. Everybody's talking about how great what Deion's going to do. It's a clown show. And I give Deion Sanders tremendous credit for promoting himself. Yeah, you'd have to be a total simpleton not to have figured that out by now. It's all about Deion. It has nothing to do. Colorado's just a prop. So I wasn't surprised at that. He did the same thing when he was in Jackson. I think in Jackson, Mississippi, when he was, I don't think they didn't, the university, I don't remember it suspending a reporter. I think, you know what? It reminds me when I was at LSU.
Okay.
And I was covering.
You're going somewhere else.
No. I was covering. I was for the school paper. I covered the two radical groups on campus. And
are we talking political
radical
stuff?
groups? It was like they weren't really radical by today's standards, but anyway, they were always protesting things and things of that ilk. And I was all about it because we were judged on how many column inches we acquired. And I got a lot that way because they were always doing stuff, usually stupid stuff. But one of them, when he was arrested, he got one call. He called me to get a story in the paper, and I obliged. And so it was a win-win for the two of us. But they suspended me. They went to our editor, one of the groups did, and said, we will not allow him to ask questions at our meeting anymore. And our editor was thrilled at the idea. So he sent me over to the meeting, but I didn't ask any questions. And we had another reporter writing about the meeting. So I can relate to that. I've probably, I don't think that's ever happened to me in the real world. It did at school, but I don't think it ever happened in the real world.
Get suspended. Well, it's happened to me. But that was kind of an odd situation in which Bud Ford was ultimately deemed a fibber. Go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, so I take this very, I have a big problem with it. Deion wants to go all out to the media for any publicity. I haven't been as critical as John has on how he's building the program. I've been kind of in a wait and see mode, but I always have a problem when you try to suspend reporters, particularly when you want to go out to the media and make yourself out there all the time. John, do you put more blame on Colorado, the school, for allowing him to get away with this, or on Deion himself?
Oh, more blame on Colorado. Yeah, because Deion, you know what you're getting with Deion. You got to rein him in. But they gave Deion the keys to the car, and they just backed off and said, okay, do what you do. And he has, and that's where we are.
And I just wanted to play off this a little bit for either of you guys. Did Butch Jones, didn't he do some similar stuff where he wouldn't let negative reporters try to come into the media if he could keep them out, or people who wrote negative columns?
John, I thought at one point, didn't they not let you ask a question or something?
Yeah, I kept raising my hand and they wouldn't let me ask a question as to Butch Jones. That's when Shy Tuttle was injured. Yeah, that's a pretty good story, pretty classic.
And then Jimmy did it for you.
Yeah. So I just kept raising my hand. And they would never call on me. And Jimmy says, "What are you going to ask?" And I told him, he said, "Yeah, I was going to ask that too, about Shy Total's injury." And he said, finally, he says, he called Jimmy, raised his hand, called on Jimmy. He was sitting next to me. Jimmy, he said, he handed me the mic, and Zach, the media relations guy at the time, I said, Jimmy, it's Jimmy. Zach, it's game over now. I have the mic. Just let it go. And so I asked the question, and Butch then, confronted with a spontaneous question for which he has to think on his feet, of course, he was totally lost. And I asked about the Shy Tuttle injury. We were told a teammate hit him with the helmet. It was a kind of a girlfriend thing. But anyway, he said, well, he fell on his helmet in the locker room. I mean, wait a minute. You talk about a college athlete falls. First of all, why was his helmet on the floor of the locker room? And then he falls and he can't brace himself. He's incapable of bracing himself. It's like his hands were tied behind his back. He just goes face down and hits his eye on the helmet and has a black eye and can't play for a couple of weeks.
That's like when you go to the hospital and you got these, you say you got something stuck somewhere because you fell on it. Which I don't want to get to.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. But John, can I share an Uncle Dave story real quick since you shared an Uncle John story? Were you a part of the Derek? Because the question's on our YouTube page. Do you want your media to be homers? And the question is, yes, love the team you cover. No, be objective. So both there. I remember Derek Dooley, and I'm not sure if you were there or not, said we're going to have a little get together. I'm like, what's this, a press conference? I mean, should I have to be prepared to write something after? And it was all the reporters. First of all, this is how stupid it was. It wasn't, there was like a usual 5 or 6 that you should trust because their reputation's on the line, right, John? Me, Brent Hubbs, Chris Lowe. Now there's 50 million people. And he, I think, went out of his way to invite 50 million people. And he's like, guys, let's just listen here. We all want this to go well. And from that point, I was like, you don't get it. You don't get it at all. And that's what I think makes me question for the first time Deion Sanders' intelligence. The point of the media is not to be your PR agency.
No, it's not. But I think it kind of goes in cycles. And right now you have a lot of fanboys in the media now. They want the coach to like them. I'll give you some advice. You're in the media. The coach doesn't like you. He might act like he does. But he doesn't really like you. Why would he? And so you're not buddies. But if you want the coach to like you, the coach called me by name when he answered my question. Whoa, we'll take that to the bank and cash it.
Oh, the ultimate red flag, Caleb, I know you got something to say, is when they go, that's a good question. That's when you've really, they're just trying to kiss up to you because you just ask about a stupid question about, well, how's it defensive back depth? Dave, that's a really good question. First of all, our defensive back depth. So go ahead, Dave.
Guys, okay, I will be honest. We're all making fun of Deion, and we're all making fun of Butch Jones, and we're all making fun of Derek Dooley because they've all run clown shows. But do we make exceptions, or are we a little too fair to coaches if they're successful? Because honestly, you know who else did this? Steve Spurrier at South Carolina actually openly told the media that I will not answer a question from Ron Morris, and he called all the TV people out to do an interview with them one-on-one, so he couldn't ask a question in the press conference. But we all love Steve Spurrier. But isn't that just as ridiculous as what Deion did? Or is it different because Steve Spurrier is smart and actually knows how to win and knows what he's doing?
I think you're dead on. I think, Steve Spurrier could get away. That was that was awful what happened there. And I got along great. I had a great relationship with Steve Spurrier. But I think if I had been a columnist in Gainesville, Florida, or I was a columnist in Jacksonville, but that was that was before he became the coach at Florida. If I had been a columnist in his area and written about him routinely, I probably would have said something that made him angry at one point. And once Steve turned against you, he was against you forever. I mean, that happened with Larry Guest, a prominent columnist in Orlando. They were played golf together all the time, and they had a falling out. But yeah, you can't. Coaches are that way. You could write 99 perceived positive stories about a coach, and then write one column critical of him, and he's like, I mean, that pretty much happened in Arkansas when Houston Nutt was a coach with Wally Hall, a columnist in Little Rock. Dave, you know Wally. And he covered Houston Nutt since he was a high school football player. And he wrote one column. Huh?
I wasn't aware of the Nutt thing. I am. I know. Everybody laugh. I am aware of on his childish show, but I am aware that Butch Jones forced at least 2 reporters that covered his team just off the constant verbal barrages and in-office cursings to give up the business entirely. And that's
what?
Yeah, I don't want to share their names now, but I'll tell you off the air. I mean, I think he was so taken aback that everybody wasn't. And I was also told that Butch Jones was, when he was on the Alabama staff, he was on the sideline. And he said to one of the reporters when Tennessee was struggling, he said, well, I was winning 9 games around here, and y'all didn't think that was good enough.
Well, he's got Arkansas
talent
State
he had on those 9-win teams. It wasn't good enough.
No.
See, I know John would wear it with the badge of honor if Butch Jones cussed him out. You would go right back and just write another column, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, just give me an extra column.
They're just like, John's turning more coffee than ever. John, have a great day, sir. We love you. His appearance is brought to you by our friend Newbert Collision Center. Check out Jeff Newbert. They will take care of you. I'm going to let you out of here, and I'm going to share a story about how Rick Clausen. Well, do you want to hear it real quick, John? Because I also.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Similar situation as I was asking Rick Clausen a question, and he just turns and he goes, hey, Bud. And Bud goes, Dave, come here. And Bud Ford tells me, Rick doesn't want to answer any questions from you because you wrote a column discussing how family connections don't work out in recruiting. Now, I didn't know that anybody was mad at me. I thought it was a pretty inane, soft column. But Mr. Clausen later that day told me, I'm so mad at you that I'm never going to speak to you again.
Well, wow. See, that's what's interesting about this. You can write something that seems very benign. You wouldn't even think of it as being very critical.
I was stunned.
Yeah. Well, you remember the incident with Gary Lundy, perhaps.
I do. Where yes, I do. Where they essentially had a press conference to give Jerry Green a vote of confidence and admonish his column.
Yeah, and I got another column out of it. So it's good for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. John Adams of the Knoxville Sentinel, brought to you by Newbert Collision Center. So yeah, so I got that from the Clausens too. It was a comparison. It was only to point out that they never work out. So like this was when the Chris and CJ Leak thing wasn't working out because they couldn't play CJ because he was terrible and he couldn't get it out of the pocket. So they didn't get Chris. And I was just saying, don't expect to get Jimmy because things don't always work out.
Yeah. And so here's my question. Can you, because I've been reading John Adams for a long time. I know I know the things he has said, but can you, like with the Deion Sanders thing, with Sean Keeler, is it justified ever if the columnist gets very personal with name calling? Or do you need to
Oh,
suck
yeah.
it up and take it still?
Well, I will tell you how Gary responded, because he was on Sports Talk with John Wilkerson and Jimmy Himes of like the next day. And I thought he really took the high road, Caleb, because the contention was from Tony Harris. If you remember, do you remember specifically how this
No,
came
I
out?
wasn't living in Knoxville at the time. I was
Okay,
12 years old.
Okay. So he referred to him as a punk. It was name calling. But this was when Tony Harris was supposedly not able to play in a game. The whole team was melting down, basically. And he was injured, so he was in street clothes, but there was a semi-scuffle, and he was able to get up off the bench and run down to the other bench and be a part of the scuffle. So Gary Lundy referred to him as a punk. Tony Harris then went to UT and said that punk was also potentially a term in prison for homosexuals, which I'd never heard before. And that's why he was so offended. Gary, the next day, said, well, then it's my responsibility, because I should know every connotation of the word. I work in journalism. That's what I do. I thought it was a total BS thing. I don't know about you, but I've never heard punk tied to homosexual tendencies. To me, that's just a punk's punk. But yeah, that's how that whole thing shook out. And they had a press conference to basically admonish the column and tell Jerry Green that he still had a job and he was in good shape, and he was fired 2 months later.